We developed this, I'll slip into it right now. We developed a Cabbage Box in Florida. I think our first entry was 3 years ago. I went down, and this is not one of the things I'm going to talk about, but I'll briefly tell you, it's product development. Going and talk to the grower, the packer, the receiver, the whole bit, and I'll go through that. The outcome was this package. Number of reasons. We wanted more stacking strength. Cabbage boxes were failing. By the time they got to New York markets, they were trash. They needed more stacking strength. There's a way to do that. Make it out of 350-pound double wall. Increase your price. You know, we'd be happy to sell you more board. The better way is to do this. It takes less board, and we have more stacking strength, if you can believe that. We have better ventilation, because now when 4 boxes come together, we have a chimney in the corner of every box. And we have airflow, a chimney right down through that. Every box gets airflow. You stack them tight together, but you can't close up that chimney on every corner. When they top ice a load of cabbage, they just spray this ice in the top. In fact, a trucker may stop on the road and re-ice. The ice is going right down those corners. It's getting to every box in that load. So we've improved a number of things. Condition of product arriving in New York, stacking, and ventilation and cooling. And we have a box that is slightly more expensive than their present box, because they also had cheapened the box down so far it wasn't going to work regardless. And that's the reason for the octagonal. Better stacking, more ventilation. Not because it's a cute design. Not because somebody had an idea for it.
Yeah. On those two 1 1/9 there, one was the extra corner. Reverse them side by side. Is that one higher?
Tad, I think this was designed to fit a 40 by 48 pallet. Any of these that we attempt to do today, the cabbage is the only one that doesn't fall into that. All the rest of them we try and design to fit a 40 by 48 pallet. The reason the cabbage wasn't, it had to hold 50 pounds of cabbage, and in Florida, they're still floor loading that item. They're not palletizing it. They spend 3 hours floor loading a truck to ship up to New York. And New York, they pay to have them unloaded the same way. And when they get to New York, they stack them on a pallet and move them into the cooler.
Does increased utilization of cube pay for that, or is this just a traditional?
I think it's the way we've always done it. And it's sad. It's changing. I'll talk a little bit about that. But Florida is just, they go to the West Coast and they can't believe what they're doing with palletization. But they come back and nothing seems to happen. So we talked about wear and win of the holes. Don't put them near the corners. And you'll hit me on this one because they've got a hole right in the corner. But we've added more corners, so we'll accept that. Other ways to get ventilation. Here's a green bean box. Unfortunately, we did this for Florida, and by the time we got ready to go to market with it, everybody had put in hydrocoolers. So they hydrocool beans now with a little chlorine in the water, so it stops the cotton mold that they were experiencing before because of poor ventilation. A wire-bound crate, they stack them in a cooler and it wouldn't cool. In fact, this one cooled side by side 3 times faster than a wire-bound crate. So we thought we really had a product. The problem is, it took us just 1 year too long to get to market with it, and everybody put in hydrocoolers, so you don't need the air circulation, the passage. We don't need a cool. We just need to maintain the product cold now. So now what they end up doing is putting them in a box like this or the octagonal. Once they're cooled, they're hydrocooled, they're just packed in a box and maintain it. Had they stayed with forced air cooling, we'd have a terrific package. That's an uncoated box. Disposal at the retail level is easy. You put it right in the corrugated baler and resell it from the retail store. Great idea. Just didn't happen. Timing is everything. Still a good box. Stacks well. It stacks like these peach boxes. While we're talking about that, this will give you an idea of the same ventilation. Ran out of chain there. Just take 2 of them. You can see that when these boxes are together, and one on top and one in here, we're creating a channel here, a V channel of air that'll move through the entire load. And I've got some slides of that in the grape industry where we were able to cool field heat out of grapes from in the 90 degrees, the pulp of the berry, down to 45 degrees in 3.5 hours by drawing it through those channels. Have to consider the packing. or the loading of the product. Is it going to be done in the field? Is it going to be done in a shed? Is it manual? Is it automatic? Here's the cabbage box loaded in the field. Here's the cabbage box, same cabbage box, loaded in a shed. They bring them in trailer load and load it in a shed, weigh out each one. And you can see they're not putting them on pallets. They're going to handle them one more time. He's stacking them on the floor in his shed. Now when the truck backs up, he's going to handle them one more time into the truck. And then he's going to top ice it and have his reefer turn just as low as it'll go and hope they get cool by the time they get to New York. This is the green bean box going through an automatic packing. And you can see the wire bound before it and wire bound after it. It had to be developed to go through the same automatic equipment. So when you're considering a new idea, you have to cover the packing end of it. How is it going to be packed? If it's going to be automatic, it better fit the machinery. Palletized, floor-loaded handling, proper stacking, banding, stretch, netting, pallet size. All very important. I think I got some slides. How loading patterns affect stacking performance. T. Downs touched on this briefly this morning. Let me go a little further. Column stacking uses the box corners to the greatest advantage. Corners contribute about 2/3 of the potential compression strength of a box. Now I can take a box and estimate what the compression strength is going to be before we ever make the box. And we're going to be within 50 pounds probably. So if I estimated a box in development, I estimated a box would hold 1,500 pounds, and then I stack it improperly, that 1,500 didn't mean anything. Now if I know you're going to stack it improperly, I can add it to the weight of the box. I can make it work by just adding enough board to it, enough paperweight. On the other hand, interlocking method reduces top to bottom compression strength up to 55%. So if I had a 1,500 pound compression load box that I developed, and you interlock stack it, I'm down to 750 pounds. Now what that means is you can only use about a fourth of that. We use a 4-to-1 safety factor in all these calculations. So this is a little diagram. This was all developed by the Institute of Paper Chemistry, by the way. A lot of testing went into years and years. Here's basically the outcome. Taking the column stack is 100% value. It's nice, neatly stacked on a pallet. Granted, you're going to have to tie the load together with either corner boards, netting, stretch, wrap, something. Look what happens when you interlock over here. Interlocking method, 60% lost. Optimum method, we were talking about that this morning, and this is exactly what you're talking about. Your bottom few layers, column stack, and interlock your top layers. Because the box that takes the biggest load is right there, the bottom one. So in a sense, when you're palletizing a load, you're designing the whole load for the strength that the bottom box needs, because you don't know which box is going to be on the bottom. So the top box could probably be half the strength of the bottom one if we could do that. So just column stack that way and then interlock on the top if you must tie them together. I'd rather see use corner boards and banding or something, or netting or stretch to hold them together. What happens if you overhang the pallet? We talk about fitting a pallet perfectly, 40 by 48 preferably. Overhang on a column stack box. Remember the first diagram, 100% is a column stack. If we're on the pallet, we have 100%. If we're off the pallet by 1 inch, we've lost 32% of our stacking. We're still column stacking. There was a slide of that load I think you had at the time where the load was tipping. It was overhanging the pallet. 32% was gone. Very obvious why it failed. If you have an interlock, you've already lost, what did I say, 40, 50%. If you overhang an interlock load, you lose another 8%. So that's the worst of all situations. Interlocked and then overhang the pallet. You're going to have a real beefy box to survive. Here's an example of a nice pallet load. This was done in Grambling, South Carolina on a field test we did last year in peaches. In fact, it's the box right there. It's forced to stack straight up column because they interlock together. All the stacking is in panels. It fits a 40 by 48 pallet perfectly, and in this case it's netted. This was in 6 high, 38 pounds of peaches in each box, 3/4 bushel. Loaded at Grambling. This is arrival in Detroit, Michigan. Same load. Guy at the market said he wanted to receive all his peaches in the future in that package because he was sick and tired of receiving them like this. This came on the same time, the trailer left the same place, Grambling Brothers in South Carolina. This was his present pack at the time, and this is how they arrived. And you can imagine, the guy in the market, the guy in the retail store, he's got 10 to 15% damage. He can throw them right down the tubes. Now you can't tell me that he isn't willing to pay more for the other package and have 100% product when he unloads. It's worth it to him. Every place we did these tests, and we ran them in Michigan this year too. We did about 60,000 in Michigan of peaches last year after this test, and we did not have a failure out there. And the comments we've heard from retailers is that's the box they want to see peaches in. So now South Carolina's interested in it again, and Michigan's certainly interested. We hope this year will be a fantastic one.
Have the folks that you talked to at retail told all their buyers this?
I would assume so. We try and convey it back too, because we talk to them and we, when possible, they'll write us a letter about it even.
Sometimes there's a problem.
Yeah, there is. No doubt about it.
Because that guy, somebody's looking at the gross that he allows them to cut.
Yep.
If he buys cheap,
Yep.
he in the short run, without looking at that, without analyzing that, he looks better.
Oh yeah, sure. But they all agree, every place we went, all the retail markets says this is the worst package for peaches that they've ever been in. Wood crate is what they'd like, but they can't afford that, and or won't pay for it, I should say. And but that's a typical type interlocking load. Yeah.
Okay, you're showing us just exactly what we've also seen in our cucumbers.
I believe that.
Mismatching. But back to that other peach carton. A big asset there is that interlock there.
Absolutely.
Little tab that holds it. Can that be done on a one-in-one night?
Yeah. I hesitate to tell you, you probably can't afford it for cucumbers. That box, I'll give you a ballpark in that box, and so it'll scare you right out of your shoes. This box is about $1.60, $1.65. But now let me tell you what that includes. That arrives to the grower like that, already set up. All stacked up on a pallet. The pallet, there's tie sheets that lock the hole so he doesn't need to net it or corner board it. As you saw in the earlier picture, it was netted. We've eliminated netting. There is nothing done to the pallet though. And everything that packer gets from us on a pallet, he takes, packs his peaches, snaps it closed and puts it right back on the pallet, and it's out the door. It's pallet, it's tie sheets, it's everything he needs. In fact, what was happening this past year, he had sold his peaches and received his money on his peaches before he was ever invoiced for the boxes. Because he got boxes that morning, he filled them, and they were shipped out that night, and he didn't get an invoice for us for 30 days or whatever.
The price you mentioned, does that include the color?
Oh yeah, that's everything. Yeah, pallet, everything.
What happens if you don't have, is that 4-color?
That is 6-color.
6 colors, okay.
Now Steve's going to talk about that. In fact, this is Steve's graphic design, matter of fact. But he'll cover that as far as,
Good.
okay? Now we do have a stock print in the peach too. And this year we've gone to plums. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it could be done. It's a costly package. Peaches are a costly commodity. Cucumbers are too, I guess. Yep.
Have any percentage-wise, what do you think it would cost to do one night for the lot?
No, haven't even looked at that. What's 1 1/9 cost now? I don't really know. You have
85 cents.
85 cents probably? Yeah, that sounds reasonable. And it's a laminated in. I don't know if you looked at that peach box. It's 4-ply laminated in it. Now we can do less than that for cucumber. It doesn't have to be 4-ply. You can. Where is it? This one's got some kind of cleat, but not a very positive one. That could be done on a bushel a night. That locks in there. That can be done no cost, basically. That's just a die change. So yeah, you could do that. Be no problem. Be happy to work on that for you. Yeah.
Does transportation freight cost? Is that included in that price?
No, that's pickup, but what we try and do is set them up within about a 50-mile radius of where the growers are. We'll do that in South Carolina too. all the growers we're talking to are within like a 50-mile radius, and their trucks come in the morning, pick up a load. In peak season, they'll use 2 loads a day down in South Carolina. And we get about 2,000 per trailer set up.
The grower's individual name is not stamped on the box. He takes care of that. If you know.
No. This one was printed just this way. Jim Miller Orchards. That's all right. That's done by us. This one is a stock if he wanted to stamp his own name on. Stock print. Bell Harvest, the bottom one. I think he's got his name on it too.
Roughly how much cheaper is the stock from box?
Not a lot, and I can't tell you offhand, but Steve, you have any idea? Dropping from 4-color or 6-color to 2-color? It's the printing dyes, basically.
20 cents, 30 cents more. It's pretty much the same as the stock because the equipment needed to run all.
Yeah. What happens is your dye cost. Jim Miller Orchards bought the printing dyes.
And that's his proprietary graphic.
That's right. That's his graphics. No one else can have this. This is his. We bought the dyes for the stock. They're ours. We run, if somebody wants that stock printing with their name on the end,